Thanks for accepting our invitation for this conversation about parenting in the age of AI. My name is B. Scott Roos. My friends call me B, as most of you here, I think, know. And I'm here with my friend and colleague Massimo Scapini. And let's get started. Why are we here? Because we're living through an epochal historical shift. The new technologies powered by large language models and generative AI are changing the look of the future. And we don't know yet what it means for our kids. What does it mean to have a job? What does it mean to contribute to the world? Nothing is more terrifying for a parent and a caregiver to send their kids into a future that they don't understand. So this requires our attention and our care. We need to take care to help build that bridge to the other side here and to help our kids enter this future that's only now starting to emerge. The other thing is that we still have an open wound from the way we as a society rolled out smartphones and social media. We were all part of a grand social technological experiment, and we watched as our kids and our own attention started to fragment, concentration started to blur, depression rates started to rise, isolation started to creep in. We go to the playground and scroll rather than playing with our friends, sit at the dinner table and scroll rather than having family conversation. The AI technologies that are entering our world shouldn't enter the world with that same carelessness. But this isn't just a kids issue. It is a family issue. Because the kids are mimicking the behaviors that they see the adults do. They see us look at our phones first thing in the morning, last thing at night, at the breakfast table, at the dinner table, walking around. They're doing what we do. So it's up to all of us, especially the parents and the caretakers, to start to design better ways for interacting with AI so that we use AI to connect with each other and to the world rather than withdraw from it and to isolate from each other. The family dinner table conversation is being replaced by parallel scrolling. And we need to counteract this. The way this debate has rolled out over the past few years has become pretty polarized with two main sides. On one side, you've got the people arguing for total restriction. No smartphones until 8th grade. This is a position very articulately and forcefully presented by Jonathan Haidt in his book, The Anxious Generation. On the other side, you've got parents who are just saying, hey, these things are here. It is what it is. We just gotta let it rip and see what happens. The good things about the cell phones and the smartphones are that we can know where our kids are. And the bad things, we're just going to have to figure it out as we go along. And that's where we are, kind of bouncing. Families bounce between these two extremes. But this debate isn't useful for most of us. The debate leaves parents in fear with little capacity to act. And there's a lot of things worth being fearful of. Here we've got a selection of them, a selection of contemporary anxieties that the AI technologies are really exacerbating. Skill atrophy, social erosion, agency transfer, misinformation, falling behind, privacy issues, and screen addiction. Let's take the example of skill atrophy, in particular the skill of writing. Parents see their kids coming home and using ChatGPT to write their homework. So they naturally ask, if ChatGPT is writing my kid's homework, when is my kid going to learn how to write? They're going to lose the skill of writing. If ChatGPT is writing the homework, the kids are going to lose out on the skill of writing. This is a valid fear. At the same time, the process is not going to reverse. The genie's out of the bottle. The large language models are here to stay. The process of writing itself has changed. What counts as good writing today and tomorrow is simply different than what counted as good writing before the emergence of large language models. So our fear needs to be complemented with new practices. We need to invent new ways of learning that integrate large language models and improve our children's chances of being a good writer of tomorrow. But here's the thing, we have to be careful because the large language models enable us to practice and play at levels that we don't even understand. We can code without knowing how to code. We can write Shakespearean poetry without knowing anything about Shakespeare or poetry. That means that we have access to these skills and powers that are not our own. They're a power in the machine. But to tap into the power of the machine in the right way, in the best way, we also need to develop our skills and to help our kids develop their skills. They do need to know how to write and think for themselves in order to be a good co-creator with the large language models. So this is what we need to discover, these practices for integrating the human capabilities and the machine powers. And we can't wait for the governments to do it or the school systems. They're going to take another 10 years. And if there's going to be a whole generation of kids who do lose the skill of writing if we don't start creating the practices and having a community around these issues. Let's just think about, marvel for a moment about the historical transition we're living through. A baby born in 2025 will never know that creating professional images required advanced design skills. They'll never know that coding was something done almost exclusively by engineers. They'll never know that cameras were required for making videos. They'll never know that composing music was a privilege gained only by years of embodied practice. They'll never know that it was difficult to speak with somebody who spoke a foreign language. And they'll never know that there was a time when humans didn't always have conversations with machines. So we're here to say that a different path needs to be charted, a path between this attitude of total restriction and the attitude of total surrender. A third path that requires families to engage in tinkering and experimenting. Again, the government's not here to do it. We can't wait for the companies themselves to do it or the school system. Families and caretakers need to be involved in charting this different path for how we can introduce AI into our children's lives in ways that help them connect to the world, connect to each other, tap into their natural sense of curiosity and inquiry and wonder, and their natural interest in sharing and having conversations. We can bring AI into our kids' lives connected with all of that. But it takes practices. We need to build the practices. And that's what we're here to start to share with you, to create a community around. It's up to us. We want to be the place where that community and conversation happens. So Massimo and I actually just finished a 4-week, 4-module, 4-week experience where we introduced this whole framework to a group of parents or expecting parents. So I'd like to take a moment after my long preamble here to check in with a couple of our participants from last time. And also, I'm open to hearing from people who weren't with us last time and who just want to put their voice in the conversation to raise a concern, to raise how this issue is showing up in your lives. Could I call on somebody from our first term? Do you all mind if I just call on you? I would call on Claire.
I had that feeling I might get called on.
Thank you, Claire.
Yeah, so we were in the last 4-week session, and my husband's on this call as well. Uh, would you just like me to, I guess, speak to my experience of going through the course?
Yeah.
Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I very much the slide you just showed about the anxieties that parents have. I was feeling that. We have a 2 and 4 year old girl, and I think throughout the course and having the same people to discuss with each week, like even in a period as short as 4 weeks, um, we gained agency over how we use AI in our home, and we thought of creative ways to bring it in with a feeling of control, with curiosity, and with I guess with like some intention in mind. And so I think we've really tried to like continue having that attitude with technology in our household since doing that four-part course. And I really appreciate the exercises you encouraged us to do because
Mhm.
it kind of put some rails on the whole
Yeah.
thing and let us experiment creatively within those rails. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Claire. Matt, do you want to compliment at all what Claire said?
Yeah, I think one of the things I noticed was that even though I consider myself someone who keeps up with these things and puts a lot of effort into them, I hadn't played with many of the tools that are really fun for kids, like Suno, and hadn't really considered it from a kid perspective. And so there's a lot of opportunities to play with new tools and find new things, which I think was beneficial for me in general. But yeah, there's no real institution that's helping anyone else figure out like because there's just all these brand new things that are absolutely incredible. Like Suno, you can make songs, and it was like immediately engaging for my daughter. And it was a way to bring her into things that I'm excited about with music that she would not have engaged with. She thinks my music's boring, and having her come up with the song was a very different interaction. So I just wouldn't have done that otherwise,
Mhm.
obviously.
Thanks, Matt. Uh, non cohort that we just finished want to say anything about this issue of what concerns you? What's showing up for you in the first few minutes? Hey, Andrew Bros, nice to see you.
Good to see you too, Pete.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a friend who works at OpenAI who has a lot of concerns about this because he has children that are 5 and 2. I'm not a parent myself, but in my job, I work for a not-for-profit on AI risk. End up thinking about these things a lot, and part of the bigger trend that I'm still trying to get my head around is like, how do we prioritize designing interfaces that promote values that we actually care about? Because I don't think it's necessarily inherent to the technology that it's good or evil. It's a
Yeah.
multi-use technology. And if you put on your imagination hat, I can imagine all sorts of ways in which we could design software that's neurologically safe and enriching for kids. But
Yeah.
why isn't it happening?
Hmm.
Like, what's the set of incentives that we need to be thinking about?
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of layers, a lot of dimensions and a lot of layers to the issue. And essentially we all need to be having this conversation. And what Massimo and I set out for ourselves to do is to say, well, what can we do as people, concerned citizens, concerned denizens of the age of AI? What can we do, even though we don't work at an AI company, we don't have influence over the interface or the user experience of the design of these systems, but we can have an influence over the design of our interaction and our family's interaction with them. And we see them as tools, the practices for which have not yet been invented. The
Right.
skills for using these tools well have not been invented. And that can land on us. It can be something that we play a role in designing and developing and spreading around.
There's just one thing I wanted to point out that is inherent in the presentation you've already given. So
Yeah.
you brought up that people have access with these tools to skills that aren't their own, that are inherent
Yeah.
in the machine. But one of those is interface design.
Cool.
So, that leaves a very interesting point that actually, if we make the mindset shift, we do have control over that in a way we've never had before, as we, a general we,
Yeah.
right?
That's a very intriguing observation. Thanks, Andrew. Something you and I should hang out and talk about some more. And yeah, thanks for that comment. Something to chew on.
Perhaps we should ask the rest of the participants to maybe leave in the chat the question of what is that their concerns are about AI and children in general, so that we have a sense of where the mindset is.
Yeah. Yeah, please leave us a comment in the chat about what your concerns are in this with this issue and what has been showing up in your family so far. Anything you can share to put your voice in this conversation with us. So, what's going on here? It's a fantastic, crazy time to be alive. For around 100,000 years or so, human beings have just been talking amongst ourselves. And to the extent that the other animals on our planet with us have their version of language, whales, elephants, birds, we haven't been able to talk with them. We've been talking amongst ourselves. But we're living through a shift. That has now changed. Because new entities populate our world now, new conversational entities. And they are changing how we learn. They're changing how we relate to the world. They're changing how we can imagine the future. They're giving us access to new skills that we didn't have before on our own. And they're also actually helping us decode some of the language of our other animals. There's a project called Project SETI that's learning how to understand the communication of sperm whales that I've been learning about. So this is a time of language revolution. And by expanding our language capacities, we expand our world. We expand our ability to imagine the future. But this language revolution is also a skill revolution. Let's just marvel again. What's going on here? That a 7-year-old has unimaginable creative powers if we can guide them to do it. And here, since I'm a kid from the 80s, I think of Star Wars, and I think of how Luke visited Yoda, and Yoda had to show him these powers that he had that he didn't know he had. That's like us with the younger generation. Every kid is now like a Jedi. We need to help them discover their powers and to use those powers for good. As an example of this, as an example of these new capacities for creative learning and engaging with the world in an extended form of inquiry and wonder using AI, I want to turn it over to Massimo to tell us an example of a kid, an 8-year-old kid who's going to visit Salem, Massachusetts, who was then studying and learning about the witch trials that happened there. And rather than just reading about it in a book, she also asked ChatGPT to tell her a story about the Salem trials, the witch trials. She then asked Suno to help her write a song about them. And then with some help from her dad, they created a video putting the song about the Salem witch trials to image. Let's let Massimo tell the story.
All right, so we're going to first see a segment of that video.
They lived in quiet, snowy towns where stories traveled faster down. People lied to catch their breath, and questions sometimes led to death. A girl who danced beneath the moon, a boy who hummed a quiet tune, were seen as strange, and that was all. But strange was all it took to fall. Ashes in the name of heaven, smoke in the name of peace. Fear became the loudest lesson, kindness lost its leaves. They didn't cast a single spell or curse the crops or skies, but still they paid the highest price for being seen through frightened eyes. The court was full of folded hands, but justice slipped like falling sand. They searched for witches in the rain and found their neighbors expressed grief and pain. Some cried the truth, some bowed their heads. Some whispered names that others said. And one by one the flames grew high, while no one stopped to ask them why. No pyres burned in Salem town, the ropes not fire pulled good souls down. Yet fear can blaze without a flame, and silence fans it just the same. So when you see someone alone who thinks or feels unlike your own, remember Salem's bitter flame, and choose to ask it not to blame.
All right. So now let me tell you a little bit of the story of how that song and video came to be. And this is my daughter. She's 8 years old, and she has access to a phone that only has ChatGPT. And she doesn't use that phone to cheat. She uses it to have questions, to inquiry about the things that she cares. And as we was saying, in a week from now, she's going to be going to Salem, Massachusetts, and she was reading books about the witch trials. And then suddenly, she just decided that she wanted to make a story for herself to read about it. And this is the prompt that she created. So this whole thing started with her grabbing the phone and saying, "Make me a historical story of the Salem witch trials, but make it in the style of Keepers of the Lost Cities." So I'm going to pause in here and to marvel about the world that we're living in which an 8-year-old can grab her phone, and for her it's natural to just say, "Create me a story." And not only that, that she already knows that she can create stories about the things that she cares in the style that she likes. And there's the story that ChatGPT created for her. She started reading that, and about two or three chapters in, she thought, maybe I want to make a song instead of a story. And this is the prompt that she had there. So, and these are just screenshots of actually what is in the phone. Make a song that is not cheesy about the Salem witch trials. And of course, that ChatGPT always answers with, "Absolutely, here it is." And here it is, and created a song. My daughter didn't like it, and she started prompting back and forward. "This is not for kids. I like this verse from the first version. This other one is cheesy, so I want another version." And after 5 or 6 iterations of this, she came to me with her phone, and she showed me, and she said, "I want to make a song in Suno from these lyrics. Here you go." And she gives me the phone, and I start reading this, and my jaw dropped. I could not believe it. I could not believe the depth of the lyrics, of her experience engaged in learning about something that she cares about. And immediately at that moment, I have whispering in my ear the techno optimist that I have. And the techno optimist was saying things like, the world changed. We're living now in a world where kids are not going to need to read books anymore. That was part of the past. Now we're just going to be giving children cell phones with ChatGPT, and they're going to create their own stories. They're going to learn pretty much everything that they want to learn about. So we created a song. We like the song that we created together in Suno. And then I told her, "Why don't you make some pictures so that we can turn this song into a video?" And then she started making those pictures, and this was picture number one, this was picture number two, this was picture number three, and then we arrived to this picture. And my daughter stopped and said, "That never happened." I didn't understand what she was saying. By my accent, I guess that you all already know that I'm not American. I have no idea what happened in the folklore of the United States. I have never read a book about the Salem witch trials. So I was confused. And I asked, "What do you mean that never happened?" And she said, "Well, that never happened. That is a common misconception because in the books that I'm reading, it says that they were hung, they were never burned in a fire." At that moment, my techno optimism sank, and I realized that there's a whole set of skills and sensibilities that the children will still need to develop in the old fashioned way to be able to be effective at co working with AI. And that is what being a parent in 2025 in the age of AI is to be open and marvel to all of the opportunities that AI is going to bring, all of the new ways of learning that are going to be created for children to be able to engage in what they care, what they want to learn about, but at the same time, to hold off into this thing that at least I have of saying, "Oh, if this is new, it's probably better, and therefore we need to embrace it." And that means that we need to be opening doors and at the same time be able to see what are the doors that we need to close for people that are going to be embracing AI in ways that are not going to be beneficial for our children. All right, B.
All right. Thanks, Massimo. So, Curiosity Craft is the name of this space that Massimo and I are creating. It's a space for taking care of a range of concerns. First and foremost, it's a place to have the conversation about how to bring AI into everyday parenting, into the lives of our families. This isn't a one size fits all situation. Kids of different ages will have different scopes of interest and will have different abilities, and also it'll be there's different what sense of what is appropriate for how to bring AI into the lives of kids of different ages. With kids who don't yet know how to read, there's we're not saying to go out and give a toddler a smartphone, but we're saying you could go around on your walk, and if you see something like a beautiful California poppy, you can ask the AI about what is this flower? What is its history? What's its significance in the state of California? You might even be able to write a song about the California poppy. When kids learn how to read, there's a different way we can start to open up how they can interact with AI using it in these kind of explorations that Massimo was just explaining with his daughter. Of course, we also have to start creating a structure to have them be aware of the risks that are involved with AI and the different new kinds of bullying or hazing that might arise. Other kinds of risks that are out there, like misinformation. We also need to be training them to be aware of those issues. But the point is that at a certain point, the kids are going to become teenagers. They are going to get full, if they hadn't yet, full unrestricted access to these devices and these technologies. And we want to have them ready with the skills to be able to use them in a way that connects with the world, that connects to conversation, that taps into their ability to discover and to learn, where they relate to these devices as a source of conversation and learning and wonder. We need to provide the skills to support that. Okay. Secondly, I was already hinting at this. We want to create a space to use AI to foster connection instead of isolation. Now, that means we need to create certain habits and skills in the family for this. That we need to counteract this tendency towards parallel scrolling that can emerge. We need to say the if we're introducing technology devices into our family conversations, we need to be always bringing them back to the shared conversation. We need to have a sense that it's our responsibility still to check the truth of what these things say. It's our responsibility to check how finally the AI devices fit into the values of our family. And that's the third issue. That every family around the world, this issue will arise. And we need to be having a conversation about what are the values and commitments of our family and how does AI fit into it. This is what we all failed to do when social media and smartphones were introduced. So, what does it look like for creating a place of interaction, for inviting these entities, these conversational entities into our lives, into our family lives? For this, we need to have parents who are aware of what AI can do. We need to be a place where this conversation can happen. We need to create awareness, create skills for parents, and to help the parents and other elders and caretakers help the kids have a relationship to AI that connects to the world in inquiry and wonder and exploration rather than withdraws from it in isolation and in scrolling and in anxiety. So, to wrap up what I've just been saying, right now the future looks uncertain. The bridge to that future is not yet built. We have a lot of fear. It's natural to have these fears. Fear brings us to our awareness, something that demands our attention and demands that we start to pay attention. But now we have the opportunity to bring care to our use of these technologies, to have a careful relation to them, to introduce them to our families with a set of skills, a framework of practices, to tap into our kids' natural sense of curiosity and wonder, and to give them a structure for seeing all the possibilities they have, all the new skills that are available to them, all the new ways that we can create this bridge to the future together. And that's what crafting curiosity is about for us, from being fearful to being careful with AI in our lives and in our kids' lives. So, this is what Massimo and I have created so far. We're just at the beginning of this, and right now we're building a bridge to the future with families by creating a 4-week experience that has 4 one-hour modules. And the first week kind of orients this whole issue about using AI, creating an attitude, a habit for using AI for shared discovery, for celebrating that possibility. The second week talks about all about what I was saying earlier about how we're living through a language revolution and how, because language is so central to our understanding of reality and ourselves, when we change the way we use language, when we change the way we live in language, when these new linguistic entities enter our lives, we change the way we learn. We change the way we build new skills. We change the way we create the future. And that demands our attention. And that is what week number 2 is about. Week number 3 brings the emotional core of being human into the picture and connects certain cycles of emotions that are connected to our learning and our engagement with each other, and speculates and explores how that connects with the role of AI devices in our learning journey. And finally, we create this attitude about what we call an infinite game of learning, where we use AI to create an infinite game of learning, of connecting to the world and shared discovery and inquiry, and that's a framework as a family that we can design and develop and evolve over time. And so week number 4 starts to create a place for that, and that's really all just an introduction to really a lifelong process that we're all going to be engaged in from now on, about what it means to live responsibly and to live creatively and to live together and to create a future together with these new tools, these skills are not there yet. It's our great responsibility and opportunity to help create them. So that's what we're inviting you to do. Really, we're going to do another cohort of this starting next week. Hey, it's free. We want you to join us. We want to create a place where this conversation happens. You can sign up right now. We would love to have you a part of it. We would love it if you told your friends and anyone else who's got this concern, which really should be everybody. Let's build this bridge together. We want to invite you into this conversation, and we hope you accept. I hope that some of you sign up for it right now. Reactions, questions, passing thoughts, concerns. What can you share?
I have some thoughts and related to actually the very much related to the name of your project of Curiosity Craft. It sort of inspired me in some concern actually. Because I'm afraid that because today with ChatGPT and AI, all the answers are right there immediately for the kids. So you sort of won't normally, this is my personal opinion, but kind of you won't be able to develop sort of a long-term love for a given subject, which in my experience leads to a deeper, long-term interest or a deep research on a given subject or craft. You know, this is my concern. I don't know what's your opinion on this.
Yeah, I share the concern. I think we need to be looking out of both directions at once, where we now have to accept it as it continues to be our responsibility as elders and caretakers and parents to help our kids discover and appreciate the value, importance, the flourishing that comes along with dedicating yourself to something and getting through the hard stuff, working through the frustration to see what learning is like when you start as a beginner in something. It's always hard. And you're right that the large language models technology are making it easier to jump in at already having some competence that isn't really ours, but we can get in and tinker around. So we also have to take advantage of that. We need to be preserving this sense and creating a place in our children's lives for this appreciation of the importance of seeing it through and developing skills over time. At the same time, we've got to get in there and see what are the new possibilities. What are the new ways we can develop skills by jumping in with these capacities to do stuff that we would normally have to practice for hours or months or even years before we got. This story isn't written yet. So it's exactly right to have that concern. And I think we need to be exploring both dimensions at once.
Right. And we also, Jose Miguel, I think that we need to think about how we're going to cultivate curiosity, as you're saying. So what are going to be the practices that in the family we're going to have conversations of being in inquiry, shared with our children something. And that is at least what I'm trying to do with my daughter. I am showing her possibilities, but at the same time, I'm engaged with her in the discoveries that she's making and trying to make it part of our journey together. And that is the beautiful part also of doing this.
Yes, yeah, precisely. I mean, not to this to become like when these small shorts of YouTube, you go one to the next one to the next one to the next one, but how to
Compulsive
create
scrolling.
exactly. And how can we tackle this? How can we you know
Right.
how
That's
can
why we have 4 weeks of exploring that, and I invite you to enroll in the next program that we're going to be running.
Yeah, you brought up infinite scroll and how terrible it is. It is pretty terrible.
Yeah.
But like, notice that that's a user experience design that
Yeah.
is bad for people.
Yes.
And Something I really liked that Massimo said, that you said, Massimo, was that the experience you were giving your daughter and the photos that you gave of the experience she was having were of a phone with a very limited interface. I kind
Mhm.
of loved that. Like it was a very simple way to solve the problem,
Mhm.
but um, it seemed like whatever the parenting environment you're in made it very natural for her to go back and forth between the phone and the books in a way that someone with access to infinite scroll would not.
Mhm.
And so I think that points to like one thing, and I'm actually really curious about how you're going to collect other people's practices that tend to work.
Yeah.
Right. That is the space that we were building together. So we want to create a community and a movement of parents that are engaged in creating that. So that
Yeah,
you're exactly right. So we
Exactly.
need to be listening and sharing, and not only this is not going to be our job to create everything. We need to
beautiful,
be the ones that are creating the space so that other parents are creating with us.
beautiful, beautiful.
I wanted to add something, Massimo, when you shared the story of your daughter correcting you that the picture was actually historically inaccurate, and then you said my techno optimist self shuddered a bit, right? My parent self was like very proud of her, and I was like, that's actually um, there's something to learn there about how you're parenting with AI, where she actually uh, because she's really engaged with the materials, she can discern between what's right and wrong. So that's like what I took away from that, and it gave me actually an optimistic sense that if you never see how your kids are using AI or never get them like curious about like something that's beyond just instant gratification of what's coming out of the screen, like that's one way to use it. But if you like actually have them engaged in something that they can be discerning users of technology, then the sky's the limit for how they use it, right? So
Right. And actually, it was even more amazing than that because um, it leaves us the problem with a dilemma. We created already a song. The song was inaccurate historically, and we needed to be responsible for that. And I had to have that conversation with my daughter and say, what is that we're going to be doing about this? Because the song is wrong. So we created that section now on the song that it has that they were not burned, they were hung. And of course that we also use ChatGPT to solve the issue. And that was the first inclination that my daughter had. And I learned something in there too, that she said, we need to ask ChatGPT, how is that we're going to solve this? So ChatGPT for her is another member of the conversation of how is that we're going to be solving things. But you're exactly right that we need to be there in the trenches with them. And that is the opportunity for us to learn how to be parents today.
Thanks, Claire. Yes, that issue is so important that keeping this concern for what's true and what is right, that we have the responsibility for that, for bringing that. We can't rely on the AI for that. And having that as part of the conversation is just really important here. So that's is just it's essential for using AI in a responsible way. We're the ones who bring care, and we can't create an attitude where it's okay just to give over all of our decisions to what we do to the AI. It needs to be an iterative process, like Massimo and his daughter did. We have to celebrate the process. That these are part of our process of thinking and learning and creating, and we always have to bring them back to conversations among humans, to ground it, to connect it back to what we care about, what we think, what we connect to the truth, and not run away, not give over our agency to the devices.
Thank you, Claire.
Matt.
One other aspect of the course that I think was a big change in how I think about AI was the focus on care and using Montessori. Our kids are in Montessori, and I just kind of think of it as like very good school rather than a specific way of thinking about education. And this last week, I was researching tutoring, just how you could give a kid a subject and they could interact with an AI tutor. And I think there's a very popular version of called Squirrel that's in heavily, it's Chinese and it's heavily deployed in Asia. It's also Carnegie Mellon has a partnership, but it's very didactic in the sense that the pedagogy is just already determined versus what it was the focus of Curiosity Craft was you can take something they're already interested in and use AI to allow them to develop skills where they're already interested and where they already have a lot of energy. And as I looked at other software, so much was just very goal directed versus something else, like maybe skill development or creating a world for themselves. I don't know how you would say it, but it became very stark after the school. I probably would not have made that distinction between the Montessori approach, which is how our children go to school, and then all of these tutoring things. It was very much just like, okay, now it's time to learn this subject. Here's the steps. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities to use AI differently than it's going to be deployed in schools otherwise.
Right.
Beautiful.
Yeah. There's a parallel to, I've been using AI as a language tutor. I speak a few languages, and I found that it's been very helpful in improving my language skills. And what I love about it is that it's open-ended. And I'm sort of curious about like what your experience is when you're dealing with kids who have these open-ended explorations that are assisted by large language models or large multimodal models. Like, what's that look like? Do they get stuck at a certain point? Is it very open and free? Like, what's that like?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a few different ways that you can go off the rails here, because even in our interaction with ChatGPT or other large language models, there can arise a version of compulsive scrolling. You can fall into compulsive prompting, and you just want to see what it comes up with next, what it comes up with next, what it comes up with next. And so that's another possibility that we have to help our kids be aware of, that they might fall into. And but at the same time, to connect to this joy of the repetition, of the iterative process, of seeing where it takes you. This is why we borrowed this phrase from James Carse called the infinite game, where it's not about learning some particular fact, or it's not about winning or some points or being able to pass a test. It's about celebrating the sense of ongoing inquiry and wonder in connection to the world. Every object in the world has a story to tell. Every person has a history. Every plant you pass on the road can tell you something about the state of California, or anything. You can go from there. You can expand, and so the world itself is a theater of wonder and inquiry, of an infinite game of learning, and that's connected to the spirit of what we cultivate in the program.
Right. And I want to say one more thing, that is that we need to be aware that we're going to be flooded by the same mistakes that were made in introducing technology in education for the last 10 years. And there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to try to make it about gamification and engagement in the screen. And that is going to be the worst that could happen. And we need to have a voice in making sure that we're aware that that's wrong.
Yeah. In our few minutes left, I'd like to call our other video denizen, um, Terry. Thanks for being here. I hope it's obvious to you how our approach here is actually very inspired by your work and the attitude that you and Fernando presented in understanding computers and cognition. That the question isn't what computers can or can't do, but what we can do with computers. I see Curiosity Craft as an evolution of that spirit and a continuation of that. And I'm really curious to hear any reactions or thoughts you might have about what you've heard so far.
Well, I mean, give you a personal thought. My tendency, and I have to confess to this, is to be a little bit on the block it out side, to say, okay, there's a lot of dangers that could happen here. Just keep it away from the kids. And what your examples really showed me is, well, first of all, they're going to get it anyway. So, as I say, if they don't get it at home, then they'll get it on the street. But it's also that the question really shifts from should or shouldn't they to what are you doing with it? And what you're asking is intense in the sense that it requires focused attention and time from an adult, a parent typically, but it could be other adults. And my reaction is, yeah, I guess I'm not ready to put that in, but I think you're right. That needs to be there. And so I think not just pretending it will go away, but really saying, okay, it's here now. How do we deal with it the right way? And that's, of course, true in the large in AI.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Well, we're here 2 minutes to the top of the hour. I would love it if anyone who hadn't had a chance to say something in the chat would add it there. And if you signed up to join us for our next cohort, we're starting next week. And this is your opportunity to participate in creating this community and helping the next generations deal with this issue. Massimo, is there any closing comment from you?
I think that just to thank everybody for coming, and hopefully you join us in this movement that we want to create for doing exactly what Terry said, that is to be engaged in struggling with the question, because we did not do that with social media and giving phones to children, and we now see the results, and this time around we need to do better.
Thanks for being here, everybody.
Thanks, B.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Massimo.